What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby. And today we're going to talk about that Thursday night football matchup between the Cowboys and the Giants. Last time we saw the Cowboys and the Giants on prime time, it was 40-0. And Daniel Jones tripped on himself.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, and then it followed up, and it was just as bad as well. It was what was it, 47-17 game,
crazy.
so or 49-17. I apologize. So selling them a little short. But yeah, 89-17. These two teams combined for last year, it was just an absolute shit show from the Giants' perspective. They have improved, but they're coming off of consecutive games and positive game scripts for them, whereas Dallas is coming off two consecutive negative game scripts for them. So it's going to be a very interesting dynamic on a short week in Dallas or in New York with possible weather on the forecast as well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The weather is actually really important because it made me change my first look. And my prop of the week. Just kind of talking about that. It's like, that's going to be really important to, this whole game and what we're going to want to do. So kind of, I'll bring it up now.
Yeah. So as you bring that up, just kind of the report we have, and again, this is Tuesday night. Things can always change, but you just kind of got to adapt and prepare when, especially if it's, it's going to massively change our lineups with this slate, especially if we do see a ton of rain. But, a Giants fan sided page saying that this game is expected to feature a lot of heavy rain, low 70s, but showers, and things aren't going to let up either. Nice. So it could be just throughout the game, just kind of an onslaught. And that's just going to be very impactful for, it's not going to be a high volume passing attack. It's going to be a grinded out game. Could get ugly. A lot of defensive battles, double defenses on the cards as well.
For sure.
Just all those elements you got to keep in mind.
Well, I think we should talk about the 43.5 being an interesting number with the weather, because normally when it rains and pours like this, like games tend to be much lower. 43.5 is implying that Dallas will get 24, and basically the Giants will get 20. It's 19.5, but Dallas right now at -4.5 for the game.
Yeah, I think it just got bumped up to 5.5.
Is it?
A lot of money is coming on the Cowboys.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a get right spot in terms of our script of the game. It's very similar. And we'll get into all that in a moment. But first off, before we even get into the slate, just wanted to shout out. Had a very successful, first week overall for the weekend. We clean sweeped ATS picks for college football slate. Hit them. Top props on Prize Picks and Underdog. Clean sweep. Hit them all. Thursday night showdown. Absolutely took down. It was a slate we said last week we weren't confident in. But this is, again, a game always play. It doesn't matter because I wasn't confident in my line. I just knew, I'm going to close my eyes and pick a receiver.
Right.
And guess what? I end up taking down, getting top 5 across the board. Basically, the same 6 correct again. Second time in 3 weeks. Wrong captain.
Yep.
Because who thought Aaron Rodgers was going to outscore Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, exactly.
That was the one difference. So pretty happy about that. And then, had a lot of success between both of us on college football. You hit a 6-pick community play,
yeah.
And then we had a lot of our props that I just kind of mixed and matched in lineups, and winner after winner. It was a very good weekend. Can't wait to see us kind of continue this, because Maine has still kind of been our enemy so far, and we're gonna look to turn that around this week, and it's going to be a lot of things to discuss in that episode. If you want to check that out as well, we'll be recording that and posting that the same day that this releases as well. So, yeah.
I think also, talking about these Thursday night slates, they've been pretty awful. Like the only good Thursday night slate that we've had for the whole year was the first game between Baltimore and Kansas City. Then the next week you get both Buffalo, Miami, and Tua goes out after he throws 3 interceptions, and they clean them out. Buffalo just beats the crap out of them.
Yeah, even though Tua went down, that game didn't go at all like we thought it would. And then obviously last week it was just an uncomfortable. We kind of had a feeling it would be kind of a one-sided game,
right?
But we weren't necessarily confident in the lines that we made. This game, feel a little better about it, but we still don't think the competitiveness of this game will be all that. But maybe it'll get back next week when we do a NFC South matchup between the Bucs and the Falcons.
A little more
looking
comfy.
forward to that one.
One thing I will say, if Dallas does get to -5.5, make sure you pick the New York Giants outright, because they have, I don't know if anybody's seen the records right now, but I believe that it's like 80%, 85% is on the side of the plus 5.5 team, including 6 or 7 of them actually winning outright. We're just joking.
Including last night with the Commanders, who were the
Commanders, yeah.
largest dog post or 8.5, I think, was what the total number ended up being.
Yeah.
And they still ended up winning outright pretty handily towards the end. So yeah, dogs have been the play all season long. Bad teams don't realize they're bad, and good teams don't have it all together yet. And so that's just kind of like reflects it on the betting market.
Yeah, and if Cincinnati's supposed to be playing a bad team, make sure you pick the bad team. Because New England and Washington have decided to just run them into the ground. So, looking at this slate, though, let's talk about this slate. We're going to start with the away team, which is the Dallas Cowboys. If it was in Dallas, we'd be a lot more comfortable with this weather because they have the dome. But at MetLife Stadium, it is not that nice. If you are going to be playing Dak Prescott in your line, I think you kind of have to play the CeeDee Lambs, the Jake Fergusons, the Jalen Tolberts. Even Kevontae Turpin's been playing a lot more, which is good. And then the last guy I want to put in there is Luke Schoonmaker, who, even knowing Jake Ferguson came back from injury this last week, Luke Schoonmaker still played a good amount of snaps.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, he obviously with Ferguson coming back, we thought it was going to be a IR candidate kind of injury, the way it kind of bent forward, and he was limping heavily off the field, and he only missed a week. But in the week 2 matchup, one of our puke tight ends or cheap spin downs was Luke Schoonmaker, and he caught all 6 balls for 43 yards, less than 3,000. It was a smash of a play. And then last week, he ends up playing still 25 snaps, which was equal to 31%, but that was also in a negative game script where they weren't playing a lot of 2 tight end sets. So Dallas typically likes to do that in games that they're playing from ahead because they're kind of like a team that's built to play with the lead. So I think he's viable. $1,000. There's not really any kind of minimum price guys I'm looking at, but he definitely stands out as the value, especially up top when you're trying to possibly fit in a neighbor CD and Dak, or even Daniel Jones, throw it in because he's expensive as well. Those kinds of things, he makes it a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the guys, of course, though, that will be, I left a guy off the thing there. Let's put Brandon Cooks in there. He deserves to be in there, right? Looking at this group, we're obviously going to be talking about CeeDee Lamb, one of the best plays on the slate, most expensive plays on the slate, also at 11.8. Jake Ferguson being the starting tight end, he does have the touchdown upside that you always want to see on slates like this, because one catch for 15 yards and a touchdown makes him very, very viable. Not at 7,000, but after, with his other production, that'll make him very viable. Jalen Tolbert and Brandon Cooks are the starters, and Kevontae Turpin has been playing more. He had 27% and 23% in the last 2 games. That's interesting because of the bad game scripts, first off. And then second off, if he is going to play more, he only needs 1 catch to be really viable because of the type of player he is. So just add him into the group of guys.
Yeah, so I mean, my top play on the slate, guy you can't really avoid, is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, obviously he's in the captain spot. He may be in the captain spot in a lineup or 2 of ours that we make in a little bit, but I mean, he's just kind of feasted on the Giants over the last 3-4 games. Obviously, there was one kind of lesser game in there. That was the 40-0 blowout opening night, week 1 of last year, where he went forward for 77. But other than that, 165 all-purpose yards and a touchdown with 11 receptions, 6 for 106 with a couple carries, 12 for 87 and a touchdown. Or I'm sorry, 12 targets, but 8 for 87 and a touchdown. And then the Giants secondary has gotten even worse. They just allowed 2 touchdowns to Amari Cooper, who has not been getting it going with Deshaun Watson. He had his breakout game. CD has done okay, but he hasn't had the truly, other than the breakaway touchdown run against the Saints when they were just kind of playing catch up, hasn't had the huge breakout game yet. And I think, if the weather holds up a little bit, this could be the spot where that happens. Maybe it's not the true boom game, but it's definitely one that you can't really avoid him.
Yeah, I looked up some of these numbers for fantasy points for CD over the last 2 years against the Giants. In the 40-0 game last year, that didn't count really. He had 11.7. He wasn't necessarily needed. Tony Pollard, I believe, had 2 touchdowns on the ground and stuff like that. And then he in the other game that last year he had 42.1 or 32.1 fantasy points, 22.7 and 17.7 in 2022. So he's basically a guy you kind of have to get to on a slate like this when we're not comfortable. Well, and we'll talk about this actually. Let's get to the running backs first before we do that. But we're not really comfortable on the Giants side, so let's get some running backs in here for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. So what's going to be interesting with this slate is that Rico Dowdle and Zeke have infamously played terrible these first few weeks, and on top of that, again, weeks 2 and 3, they're down 3 scores at halftime each game. That definitely doesn't bode well for somebody like Zeke, who's just kind of your grind out guy that's going to play with the lead and get you a couple carries, a goal line touchdown. And then Rico Dowdle, who's, I guess, more the change of pace guy, he still has not made the most of his opportunity. You originally had both of them as the fades, but not only with the weather, not only with the game script that we're talking, and then also Jerry Jones saying that Dalvin Cook will not be activated on Thursday already, that gives me confidence it's just going to be a two-man punch. They're both very affordable, easy to click on, and I think one of them should be in the optimal line.
Well, so as you said, with the weather reports, it makes me more comfortable with them, and it definitely takes them out of the fade position, because if we get into a game script where they're up by 10, 15, 20 points, it's like, okay, Zeke's going to run the ball a lot, Rico's going to run the ball a lot. I did want to put everybody up here just so you can see the price. 6,400, 6,200 for the top 2 running backs. Dalvin Cook's not playing. He's at 3,000. And then Deuce Vaughn, who's getting...
Yeah, he had 5
snaps,
10 snaps the game before, so very minuscule work. But Hunter Lupke, the fullback,
yeah,
actually played 30 snaps last game. Had a couple downfield passes. Very interesting. He still hasn't had a carry this year yet, but I mean, he's kind of, if you want to consider like a Kyle Juszczyk-esque play for a DFS slate, that can always work out.
He's $800.
Don't mind it. I mean, he's had 2 catches in 2 of the first 3 games. I just think it's going to be a grinded out game, and this could be an ugly game where they just like, Hunter, get in there, get a couple touches there.
Yeah, why not, right? Because if we're running downhill, he's a guy that maybe will get the ball. Number 40, we love to see that for the fullbacks. But yeah, so just wanted to shout him out. He is $800 behind both Dalvin Cook and Deuce Vaughn, who have had basically no time on the field at all.
Right.
So let's clear this, and then we'll talk about the very much more uncomfortable New York Giants. If we are going to talk about them, there's a couple guys that we kind of have to just kind of throw in here. First one, if we talk about wide receivers and pass catchers, Malik Neighbors, he's just been the best thing that is going in New York right now. I want to say his target share one of the weeks was 60%, 65%.
64%.
Oh my gosh, that's
He's wide receiver 1 overall through 3 weeks, which again, sounds like a big L because we essentially were truly fading him on the DFS slate. Well, just historically, it didn't make a lot of sense, but also early in the season, they've had really positive game scripts for him with really good secondaries. Obviously, Dallas isn't a top 5 secondary, I would think, but it's definitely an improvement based on what he's seen. Obviously, last week against Cleveland, very, very impressive with what he did. I was very happy on my fantasy team having him, and I bought low because in redraft his ADP was way, way different.
Yeah, much cheaper.
So, yeah, he's definitely viable. Jalen Hyatt is a guy that we were kind of back and forth as the last guy in on best ball teams of maybe he can have his breakout year. He's not getting any kind of touches or looks. I mean, last game he had a season low 10 snaps.
Yeah, 14%.
I think he was targeted once, didn't catch a ball, and he's just kind of been a non-factor again. Darius Slayton, we actually thought was going to miss due to an injury, but he ended up playing 82% of the snaps. Wasn't targeted much, but one guy that's been interesting has been Wan'Dale Robinson, who obviously he was coming off an ACL injury last year, but he's been kind of the poor man's like slot version, kind of just get the ball immediately to. And he's another year removed from his ACL injury. And look at his target share so far. I mean, he has had 8 targets a game through 3 weeks. The one game he had 4 targets, that's the game he scored a touchdown. So You're getting 12, 10, 13. And I'm actually surprised at this price point. 4,800 for him is pretty interesting. If they're going to be playing from behind, should help him. I mean, even in games that they were playing ahead, he actually had some production. So very interesting, worth playing. Um, Obviously, being $6,000 cheaper than somebody like Malik Neighbors, he has less of a target share, but it's still viable enough to where obviously you got to play a giant, even if you think this is a blowout game.
Right.
He's somebody that kind of makes things work.
Yeah. Wandale is one of the guys that we liked getting in like the 16th round because guys like Demario Douglas, they don't play all the snaps, but when they're in, they are asked to be the outlet they're not going to get 200 yards or anything like that. They're going to get 7 catches for 70 yards, 10 yards a catch. So we definitely targeted him a little bit. I want to talk about the running game here because I know that we're not going to be necessarily targeting it, but there is a guy that I want to talk about down here in Tyron Tracy. These are our 3. Devin Singletary has been way too good for what we're going to expect for the rest of the year. 19.8 last game, 15.5. He's just been okay.
So,
I mean, he's just been good.
He's been very good, very impressive. I actually did a best ball like from week 4 on kind of draft to see how ADPs had changed, and I sent you a picture. I didn't end up showing you the picture of my team. His ADP was all the way up in the 5th round.
That's
like,
crazy.
Just kind of people are just like recency bias, and it's like the Giants are probably going to play from ahead 4 times max this whole season, and 2 already have happened.
Right.
So very positive game scripts for him. But you see in the Minnesota game when it was not close, how inefficient he was, and also, how he didn't really return value. 9 points, very serviceable, but when you're spending 8,200, that's not going to get the job done on a slate like this.
Exactly.
But it is worth noting, if you do believe this is a closer game. Dallas is dead last against running backs right now. Obviously, they gave up a 4-touchdown, 100-plus yard game against Kamara, and then a 2-touchdown, 100-plus yard game against Derrick Henry. Obviously, they've been gashed left and right. The run defense has been the problem, not the pass defense. So it does cater to another positive environment, especially if he's at home. Dogs are killing it.
Rain.
If you think that this game is closer than actually anticipated, and it's against the game script that we are predicting, he's worth a play. It's not like we're considering him a fade. It's just this is it's just a weird price point that's hard to kind of fit with what we're trying to get to.
Right, for sure. And the reason that I think there's another guy that plays running back for the Giants in Tyron Tracy that I'm going to be talking about. He has 2.6 fantasy points per game right now. Fine, whatever. He has gotten an uptick every single week in his snap counts. He went from 21% in week 1 to now 31% this last week in his snaps. I just think he's on the going up, and he's 2,800, and you get a huge discount. You have to put a giant in. We talked about this earlier.
Right.
Why not put in a guy that is going to be super cheap? He will get more touches than 5 touches, in my opinion. He's a good pass catcher.
He ended up with 7 touches. So 7 touches,
enough,
40 yards. I mean, that's very serviceable. And 6 points, getting somebody less than 3,000 is exactly what you're looking for, especially when you're trying to spend up on guys. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people wanting to play with Malik Neighbors because of how well he's played. And obviously, CD and Dak are kind of unavoidable in a game that they're favored.
Right.
Playing pissed off, all that good stuff, and the success they've had against the Giants. So if you're trying to fit all 3, you got to get ugly down low, and he's very easy to kind of get some relief off that.
Right. And then, I mean, the only other guy down here for the Giants that I think we're comfortable talking about is Theo Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we're comfortable talking about Theo Johnson is just because of his snap counts, not because he's actually been productive. Currently,
here's the deal with those snap counts. They end up working out every now and again, especially on showdown slates.
Oh, yeah.
Prime example was last week when I wanted my last guy in to be Tyler Conklin, and you kind of disagreed, and you were like, I actually am more comfortable with Austin Hooper. And early on, I was kind of nervous because Hooper had a 20-plus yard reception called back, and I was like, ooh,
yeah.
Okay. And then Tyler Conklin sets career highs, 6 for 93 out of nowhere. But again, he had 90% of the snaps in the first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my tiebreaker for him, and it worked out with Theo, 86%, 80%, 81%. I mean, he's not really getting the looks, pure tournament play, but I mean, he's going to have a couple weeks every now and again, and weird slates like this is exactly how those guys can be optimal.
Absolutely. So if you think and they're only $400 apart between him and Tyron Tracy. So if you're more comfortable with Tyron Tracy at running back because you know the touches will be there, he has a floor. Go with him. If you think Theo Johnson, because he is more of a tournament play, go with him. Next up, we're going to talk about our game scripts. I'm going to let Cam start it off.
Yeah, really quick, before I just do want to mention also, obviously, kicker situation. Brent Aubrey right now, best kicker in football. He is averaging over 15 fantasy points a game. He's been incredible. Somebody I'm prioritizing. But the Giants, Graham Gano went to IR, and then Greg Joseph struggled this past week, and there was non-committal on whether or not he would even be the kicker in this Thursday's game. So both of those kickers will be 4,400. If you're going to play the double kicker game or double defense game, stuff like that, that's just kind of worth noting to keep an eye on. Just don't pick the wrong kicker because they're all kind of in that same range.
Right. Make sure to look up as we get closer to game time, see who the kicker is that will be starting. Look at this. Look at that, man. I mean, 10 for 10, 65-yard long.
He hit a 66-yarder that they iced him, called a timeout, and then there was a delay of game, and they didn't want to give him a 71-yard attempt, which I have a feeling he would have smashed.
Yeah, I think he still can make it, which is crazy.
Yeah, that 65-yarder had at least 5 yards on it.
That was week 1, though, right?
Yeah.
So I would be less comfortable in week 1 versus now watching him hit a 65-yarder.
Exactly,
you know.
So,
but yeah, Brendan Aubrey.
And you don't want to do the kicker jinx, and we probably just did. But he also has never missed a 50-plus yarder in his entire career so far. Meanwhile, Justin Tucker, who has kind of become the GOAT of all kickers, also has the field goal record at 66 yards. He has basically missed 7 of his last 8 from 50-plus. He's just getting old, man. He's getting old.
Sad day, man. Sure. So sad. I miss good Justin Tucker, but
he's in shambles.
He's never been on my team, so it doesn't matter. He's always been under the Baltimore Ravens, and UT. I'm not a UT fan, so. But Cam, let me hear your thoughts on the game.
Yeah. So with this game, I just kind of think it's more of the same with last year. This is kind of a get right spot for Dallas. They were embarrassed 2 weeks in a row, both at home. They cannot drop 1 and 3. I understand it's a bad weather game. Y'all aren't stopping the run. This is the Giants. The Giants, I know you're 1 and 2. You almost were 2 and 1. You lost on a game-winning field goal to Washington, but you're playing better than you actually are. Dallas, you're playing much worse than you actually are. I think this is actually just kind of a humbling experience, kind of similar to what we saw last week with the Jets and the Patriots, where Patriots came in 1-0, almost 2-0, based on an overtime loss to the Seahawks. Jets struggled against the 49ers, obviously, without CMC at the last second, and that was a big fail on our part. And then the second week, kind of struggling against Tennessee as well. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, okay, we know who's the better team. And it was very clear from the jump. I expect a similar outcome in this game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like you said, 89-17 in the last 2 meetings in the last season during their games. That game, it's crazy to think that Washington is atop this division right now. Based on, I believe, Philly's 2-1 also, but based on tiebreakers, Washington's ahead.
Right. Which I did say way back when they were the best bet for the NFC East if you wanted to pick a bet, because they were like 10-1.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
Fair enough.
They're winning through 3 weeks. I'm just saying.
Yep. And then my expected game script, you had it at 34-10, and I know that might not come to fruition just because of how the weather is and stuff like that. Right. I actually changed mine from a higher score because of the fact that the weather is a thing. I have Dallas winning 27-7. I think they do basically whatever they want in this game. I think the 5-1 and the 4-2 that we're about to talk about, how you build these lines. 3-3 doesn't make sense. I tried the 3-3 last week. I messed up. I should never have done that with New England. I'm going to learn from my mistake. I'm going to learn from that, right. And we're going to build better lines today, because a 5-1 and a 4-2 for a team that's much better. It's going to feel kind of like last week's game. And that's how I feel.
And then both of us have the Giants scoring under 13 points. If you are doing any kind of prediction and you think that any kind of team is going to be under that 13-point threshold, which you get automatically 4 fantasy points from that defense, the opposing defense, in addition to whatever other additional sacks, turnovers that you create,
right? You
need to be playing them. And honestly, for being a 5.5-point road favorite, I actually can't believe that they're only 5,400. Dallas is a defense that I don't know if I can get away from this week. I actually like them maybe possibly even more than Brendan Aubrey.
Well, just wait till you see my first look.
All right.
I will let Cam talk about his possible captains for the week because I think that that's a super important topic to this week. I don't think there's very many.
Yeah, so pretty straightforward, kind of similar to last week. You're somebody who's going to be the highest raw point scorer. Just don't overthink it. Typically, we don't fit the quarterbacks into captains very often, but in lower scoring games and bad weather environments, whoever you think is comfortable that can get you 15 plus,
Aaron Rodgers.
just put him in.
Yeah.
Last week, the optimal first place line, had Aaron Rodgers as captain, and never in a million years did I think that he would outscore both of those skill players. Sometimes you even see the optimal captain not outscore them, but it's just because of the value that they get.
Of course.
Well, he still outscored them in addition to having the better value.
Mhm.
So I think this is a slate where Dak Prescott, very comfortable having him as a captain. Malik Neighbors, if you just want to get weird, I mean, he's playable. I usually don't in a non-competitive game have the opposing team having that captain.
Of course.
But CD Lamb's my top captain, man. I just can't get away from it. I think he has the safest floor, the much highest ceiling.
Willing to play anybody under Dak at captain? Because I think that's a tough. I don't know that there's a guy that I'm really comfortable with. I think everybody under Dak is a tournament play.
I actually think that if you do feel comfortable between one running back or the other, either one is viable because you don't typically see a starting running back that could score 12 to 15 below 7,000. So if they're going to be ahead, they're going to be playing in a positive script for either of them. I don't know who's going to get the bulk of the touches or the goal line touches. I think Zeke will have more goal line carries and Rico will have more passing work and possibly get 5 targets because of bad weather game and playing the short game.
Yeah.
And then also having more yards. So whoever is your cup of tea, I think either of those guys are viable as a captain to get weird. And on top of that, I don't think anybody's even looking in that direction. So it's good leverage over the field.
For sure. I have a feeling that we're going to see the top 3 players in almost every captain spot.
Exactly.
Definitely the top 2 receivers. And with the weather, it's a place where you might be able to get away and get the running backs up there. And it saves you some salary to get some of the, guys like Brendan Aubrey, which will make you very happy. For me, I think that, I'm probably not going to play anybody under Dak Prescott at my captain spot. And that's just because I think that they have the highest raw points. It's a game that's going to be lower scoring in my personal opinion. I said 34. Mm-hmm. So I think that makes sense in how I'm going to build. Who are your fades for today? I know we have fades on here.
My one fade that I wanted to mention was Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones just looked awful for good reason. That's kind of how it turned out to be 89 to 17. He has been back-to-back weeks puke viable on the main slate. We called that week 2. We didn't really touch him week 3, but we also didn't expect the Giants to beat the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
But back-to-back weeks off a multi-touchdown performance. I just don't think that that's in the cards for him. And basically the only thing that can kind of save them is any kind of excessive rushing output that could exceed like 60 yards, which is reasonable for his style of play. But I just don't see that this week, so that's why I'm not willing to spend that for 9,400.
So my fade is actually I have Rico Dowdle / Zeke, and it's more so like pick your running back that you're going to fade because I think in this situation, like I'm gonna fade Rico Dowdle completely. But if you're watching and you're like, well, no, Rico's gonna score the touchdown, go that way and fade Zeke completely. But if you're going to make multiple lines, we're going to talk about this later in how we're going to build these lines. But this is probably a 3-max start type of build.
I think it's a fun 3-max slate.
Yeah, slate. Make sure you fade one of them. And I would play one of them in a line, minimum one.
I'm definitely not mad at that. I actually think if there's a Cowboy that you had to ask me who would be the Cowboy that I'm fading, it's Brandon Cooks. And it's mainly because he's had under 40 yards 3 straight games to start the season. Targets wise, it's been okay. Obviously, he salvaged his one day with the touchdown in week 1 against Cleveland, but then 2 for 19, then 2 for 16. I expect this from playing from ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Deep threat. He's not really the guy that's getting the close range touches. 6,800. I just think his floor is much lower than any other player, and in terms of a ceiling, I just don't think this is the game environment for him.
The only reason I kind of have a little bit of pushback is because he had, and it has to do with last year's games against the Giants. He had 173 yards last year against the Giants,
I
which,
remember that game.
If you had him that day, you were very happy, obviously.
I definitely was.
And Dak Prescott had 404 passing yards. CD went over 100, the whole thing.
But then also, the first game, when it was 40-0, a similar blowout, he went 2 for 22.
Right.
So, yes, he did have that ceiling in a dome game that, Thanksgiving, good environment for him. And that was kind of a game that just took an avalanche towards the end. But if it's a grinded out game, an ugly game, bad weather, it's just kind of interesting. He's a very volatile player, and spending 6,800, it's kind of a little steep for me.
Fair enough.
But again, if you want to play him, go ahead. I think you'll be kind of right with the field if you go 33% in a 3 max.
Right. Next up, let's talk about some build styles. I mean, of course, we've had this sitting up here for a while, but we've kind of talked about the fact that we're probably going to play either a 5-1 Dallas sided or 4-2 Dallas sided. I'm getting away from my 3-3. That's not going to happen this week. I'm going to find some cheap Giants basically if I want to put them in there. But yeah.
So this week, I'm going to kind of get short sweet to the point on my first look. My first look last week, I stayed with, and that was the line that took down for the Jets and the Patriots contest. I feel even better about this lineup in this one. I'm just waiting. I'm doing a wait and see on who I feel like is the running back. So put in CD at captain, and you're going to pair him with Dak.
Of course.
Then we're going to go all the way down. Let's put in Zeke for now. I'm going to say that he's the lesser owned running back, so we'll just go ahead and get the leverage. And I'm going to go double Cowboys defense and Brandon Aubrey.
Perfect. I love it. I think I know where you're going last.
And then I'm going to finish that off with Mr. Wan'Dale Robinson, hopefully getting some PPR stats. And you get about 500 remainder. Obviously, you have the less, in what my eyes would be the less popular running back. And it's a great 5-1 build. You have the highest ceiling, raw point score as your captain. I just feel very comfortable with that line.
Yeah. So mine isn't that different, truly. I have a whole 2 players different in my line. Of course,
good to hear.
Yeah, my Giant will be different. We've kind of talked about him. It's going to be Malik Neighbors, but I don't hate this line. I like this line a lot. Like you said, the salary discount between Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale makes it very interesting. Giving you that $6,000 difference with a guy that has done pretty well up to this point. He's just not getting 65% of the target share, and so I kind of want to tap into that. That's one of the reasons, even knowing in a bad weather game, I think that Daniel Jones is going to be like, where's number 1 the whole time?
Right.
Which is fine. If he is that guy, and he gets that output, then I'll be feeling pretty good. But I really like this build. I agree with all of these guys. Even if you're going to go with running back, I think Zeke is the guy. But if you don't, go ahead and go up to
you
Rico.
can fit both in this line. So it doesn't matter which way you want to go. But usually if you're having more remainder, you're going to have the less duped line. And that's just kind of how I viewed it in this regard. So, yeah, let's go ahead and you can show me your first build since you said it's a pretty similar one.
Yeah, it's similar. It's but it's definitely going to probably throw you off a little bit. I'm definitely going to put CD and Dak in there. They aren't going to be a captain. I thought that this.
I know where you're going.
Yeah, you do. Oh, it's going to be fun. But yeah, so let's go get the Brandon Aubrey and the Cowboys defense. I've done something crazy today, guys, and I think y'all are going to hopefully appreciate it. But my captain is going to be Malik Neighbors.
Okay.
And that is unstacked Daniel Jones. And then I have $1,200 to go all the way down here and get one of our punts and Luke Schoonamaker. This is a 5-1 with a Giant at captain. And basically what this is, if you had to draw a game script around this, I'm saying that the Giants are going to just try to get the ball to Malik Neighbors as much as possible. He will have 65% like he did in week 2 against, that was Washington?
Yep.
65% against Washington. He'll have that type of volume. And then the Cowboys are just going to, basically do everything else and blow get the 27 points that I had for the Cowboys is just going to go to them. So it's a little bit different, weird build, but I think it's very tournament viable and fun and interesting. So
yeah, I definitely like all the players. I think even knowing that, I would maybe even just because obviously you can't afford CD at
Right.
captain
Take
this
Zach.
build, putting Dak at that build just because again, typically if I'm doing a 5-1, I usually like somebody of the 5 as my captain. It gives you a couple extra remainder, but actually that might even be the more duped line than yours because everybody kind of feels a similar way that I do about
Right.
the 5-1 thing. So very interesting build, definitely viable. Probably going to be playing that as a part of our 3 max.
Yeah, and I think if you do go Dak at the cap, that's perfectly fine. He will then, of course, have multiple. He has 2 receivers, in CD and Luke Schoonmaker. He's got his own kicker, so everybody's correlated with Dak. And then the defense, short fields. Here we come, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just have a hard time getting away from Malik Neighbors, in my personal opinion, which last week bit me in the butt because I had a hard time getting away from Ramondre, and he had what 1.3.
0.3.
0.3. Oh, there you go. So
depending on how much your fumbles
right,
cost
of
in your
course.
leagues, but yeah, it was a very rough, humbling showing for after very 2 positive game scripts. And again, kind of a similar thing of how I feel about Devin Singletary. Ramondre, 25 opportunities in each of the first 2 games,
Mhm.
and then a negative game script, and all of a sudden just absolutely implodes.
Yeah.
Again, he was 11-8, I think, or
Yeah.
11-4,
11-4.
and I was just like, that was my initial fade. And then I ended up saying like we could play him, but then I ended up not doing a 3 max. I just played 1 line,
Right.
and that ended up being the right decision because he was like 75% owned and 0.3. You're probably in a good spot if you did fade him.
I have a hard time believing that Malik Neighbors, a captain with these 5, would be duped. So, like, if you're going to play that line, make sure it's in tournaments. Like, don't put that in your cash game line.
Right.
Play Cam's line in cash games if you're going to play a line. That makes way more sense. Wandell makes a lot of sense. CD at cap, the raw points are there. That would make a lot more sense for a cash game line.
Gotcha. So yeah, let's kind of do a little bit of contrarian.
Yeah.
Be different. There's a couple ways to go. One question I did have is how interested are you in maybe doing a very, very cheap captain?
I'm not against it. What's very, very cheap look like?
Well, very cheap, not very, very cheap.
I see.
Maybe just one very, but I was thinking maybe even going Cowboys defense or even Brendan Aubrey.
I would think I'm on the Cowboys defense.
That's fine.
I think Cowboys
and
defense.
I should think between the two, maybe because of how well Brendan Aubrey's played, 16 plus points a game so far.
Right.
Everybody would be looking at that and being like, "Oh yeah, I could play that as captain." But
and
bad weather. Again, look at week 1, how 17-point upside. We saw that on a routine basis last year rather.
Yes.
When early in the season they were just, if it was a bad team that they were playing, you wanted to start Dallas's defense no matter how expensive they were. I think one time that they were 5,200 on FanDuel,
right,
and which is way over the max usually, and we still played them anyway, and they scored like 26 points.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a very interesting way to go. It's a good environment for them to possibly be getting 12 plus points, just like the Jets were last week. If you did do the Jets, they ended up with 16 points, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they turned out well, and that would have been a great captain contrarian play. I feel a similar way about Dallas.
Throwing in our must plays in the CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. I think it's interesting to talk about which New York Giant we are putting in this line.
Well, how uncomfortable are we getting if we do Neighbors?
I mean, that's not that uncomfortable in my personal opinion. I could put Brandon Aubrey in.
Yeah.
I could put 3,900.
Oh yeah, we need Brandon Aubrey.
It would be the Giants defense. That's a little uncomfortable.
Slayton, yeah. We could go down to Tracy
and make it really
similar to what you were saying.
Yeah,
1,100 would be really, really different.
Well, he is my contrarian tournament play of the week, so it makes sense to me.
Or if you wanted to get even kind of crazier, saying Brandon Aubrey, love you. We're going to be over the field to you at 67%, but maybe there's a way that either Dallas just only scores touchdowns, maybe the weather makes you miss 1 or 2 opportunities, or just kind of wanting to punt instead of doing that long field goal in the bad weather. Maybe we just kind of go down to Luke Schoonmaker and see what else we can get. Obviously, that would open up about close to $8,000. Obviously, that would still leave some remainder. But I think that's kind of interesting.
Jake Ferg.
For basically any other kind of additional Cowboy.
Give us
It would
another
keep that
5-1.
5-1 build. Double
$900.
tight end, I don't think people are going to do.
No, yeah, exactly.
So that's just kind of another interesting route if you wanted to kind of play around with some 5-1 builds.
Yeah. What if we did the Brandon Aubrey side of it? Took out, let's see, Ferguson, and so we were here.
Mm-hmm.
We could also go no neighbors and try Wando.
Yeah.
Let's try Wando.
It's 48.
Cowboys back in 10-1. You could go Daniel Jones for raw points. You could,
Sure.
Shoot, you could probably put Jake Ferguson in and flip your captain.
Yeah, I don't know if you can go all the way up to Dak with 3,000. Maybe you can.
It'll be close. Yep,
Yeah,
can.
you can do
Perfect.
it.
$400. I mean, all those lines are very viable in my personal
Yeah.
opinion. I think the Dak at cap will be interesting, especially with a line like this. This is actually your line, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different, obviously, but it's pretty close to what you
Yeah, it's
had.
essentially instead of either running back that you want, you go up to Ferguson and then go down to Dak and
Yeah.
captain, which I don't hate.
Yeah.
It's just
it correlates. If you're going to do this, like it correlates really well because you go to Ferguson, who's going to catch balls while running backs are going to run the ball.
right.
They don't always correlate as well unless they're going to get
I actually
five targets.
I might even favor this one more if it weren't for the weather.
Fair enough.
Honestly, because Jake Ferguson, again, we thought this was a multi-week injury, and then last week I mentioned as like a tight end prices and stuff. I was like, this isn't a bad price, but I just don't trust his workload.
Right.
Oh, no, we're gonna throw 90 yards to you right out the gate, 11 targets. I don't care how hurt you are.
Right.
We're just gonna make it work. So,
yeah.
Again, I like the line a lot. If it was fair weather, probably would prefer it over my first look. But yeah, definitely interesting. Definitely a lot of ways to mix together, but I wouldn't go too crazy. And if you're doing like 150 or 20 max, typically we don't even do those anyway on showdowns. But if you're doing a 3 max, you kind of agree with our game script a little bit. It's really kind of self-explanatory how you want to go. Our favorite two giants for certain to build around are either going way up to neighbors
or
just Wandale, pretty solid value. Both are going to be pretty popular. They're probably going to be two of the most popular 3 giants, depending on how people do Singletary.
Right.
But yeah, definitely like it a lot. And then before we get out of here, let's talk about our favorite props of the night for this showdown specifically. Last week, I did a pepper or a demon for the Garrett Wilson anytime touchdown. Came through for me, even though he struggled against Christian Gonzalez. You had Breece Hall, 29.5 receiving yards. He fell at 29 receiving yards.
I know. Sad day, man.
It was a very sad day, but you hit the nail on the head. It's just it didn't work out. Even if you did play the total yards, I actually preferred his all-purpose yards.
Mm-hmm.
He still fell short because
they just didn't play in the fourth
and then
quarter.
Also Breece Hall. I'm sorry, Braylon Allen has just been such a good 1B that they're just like, well, we don't need to run you into the ground because
right.
So my favorite prop this week right now, and again, it kind of depends on whoever you like as your running back for the Cowboys this week. Both of their rushing props are very reasonable. You got Rico Dowdle at 37.5, Zeke at 27.5,
28.
28.5.
Yeah, 28. It just switched.
Yeah, it actually went up.
There it is.
But yeah, I really like it. Very positive game script. Even a demon touchdown is very interesting because I bet you it's more than just like a 1.1. Like it. And I think it's pretty easy to go over. I don't expect him to get more than 12 touches.
Right.
But I don't think he'll be so inefficient that he can't hit that line on 10 to 12 rush attempts, which, again, 7.5 is another very interesting one in this kind of environment.
Yeah, I was going to say, for what we're getting, I think that 7.5 is super interesting, too. I am going to hop on mine.
You don't even have to type. It's right there. Oh, or okay, you switched it. I forgot.
Yeah, for more comfortable. Oh, it went down. Ooh, now I'm a little less comfortable. Well, I had Daniel Jones at under 16 fantasy points on the dot, just because of the fact that I just don't. Why does it keep doing that? I don't see them scoring very many points. And so
essentially, kind of the way I see it, as long as you are comfortable saying that Daniel Jones is not going to score 2 touchdowns, I don't think he's hitting that line.
I agree.
So basically, last week he went 19 points, but he had 2 touchdowns, and then the week before he had 18 points, but he had 2 touchdowns. He would have been under both weeks if it was just 1 touchdown. Feel the same way. We have them both scoring under 13 points, so they're not even going to have 2 scoring opportunities anyways. So if you think they're going to score 2 touchdowns or less, I think that's a very good number. But anything more than that, and you think this is going to be more of a higher scoring affair, or Dallas just still can't stop anybody, maybe that's one you want to stay away from.
Fair enough. It is at 2.75x instead of 3x if you play these together because they're on opposite sides.
Yeah,
Makes
they
sense.
positively correlate with one another.
So I would keep them out of the same line unless you're just that confident in them. But we are pretty confident in this. I'm going to give y'all also my other pick that I was looking at, which will not correlate. So that's good. It is this pick right here. Malik Neighbors over 10.5 targets. It's because of the fact that I think with Neighbors, if he does get that high volume, Daniel Jones is probably going to have to throw it 30, 35 times because they are going to be behind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if Neighbors gets 30% of the targets, he's going over this number. I think it makes a lot of sense. So
right. Yeah. I mean, I don't mind it at all. I think I would have preferred it again. Don't want to keep on saying it, but just the weather.
Right, for sure.
That's the only thing that has to do with it. And then also the one negative game script that we have as a sample size for him was against Minnesota, and he only had about 6-7 targets.
Right.
Just kind of had an okay game, and they didn't really say, "Oh, we're playing from behind. We're just going to pepper you." They actually did that when they were ahead. So very interesting. Also, do want to point out before we do get out of here, one more week of promos on Prize Picks. They're doing a free square for Patrick Mahomes. For yardage up to $25 as a play if you want to get in on that. And then Underdog right now, I'm sorry, I think it's Caleb Williams one more time
again
on Prize Picks, and then on Underdog it is Patrick Mahomes this week for a free square. Yeah, just a bunch of promos still going out. Just take advantage while you can. We've been doing it. Our bankroll's kind of increasing and more because of these promos. So like it a lot. If you have some time, play it and just kind of keep on increasing. If you want to tell us, cool. And then shout us out if it works, and if it doesn't, tell us we suck. I don't care.
Yeah. Any publicity is good publicity, right?
Exactly.
No, but we appreciate y'all hanging out with us. If y'all haven't gotten an opportunity to like, comment, or subscribe on this video, please do. We would love to hear what y'all have to say. Last week we had someone comment on the video, and we were talking back and forth. I hope that he played Cam's line, because Cam's line was, top 15 in every contest, basically. Yeah. And it was duped, but not crazy duped, which was good.
About probably, I think it was like because I don't do the million entry 150 max lines because, we don't have the bankroll to just put in 150 lineups.
Right.
So essentially I just kind of find single entries, 2 max, 3 max that are, a couple thousand people or a couple hundred people. And so I think like the 3,000 person contest, I think it was due maybe 12 times or so.
That's pretty good.
It's not too bad for a 6 person lineup. I'll take that.
Yeah. So I hope if y'all got an opportunity to watch last week, y'all played Cam's line. It went really good. This week it's going to be my line. Why not? So if y'all get a chance, like, comment, subscribe on this video, and we appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
So
check out for the main slate we got coming out, First Look, and then also we'll see y'all on Sunday. We do live streams every Sunday starting at 8:30, crack of dawn, and we are here basically until y'all don't want to talk anymore, and then we'll have a lot of fun on Sunday. So
for sure.
But until then, we will see y'all next time. Y'all have a good one.
Bye, guys.